this is the structure of what we call the performance matrix. It's how we've trained thousands of athletes ranging from 5 years old to the professional level. I'm going to break it down here. We're going to focus specifically on acceleration. I don't want to get into initial force, center of mass, or max velocity yet, but this is the 4 pillars that we call here at KPM the performance matrix. So we got acceleration, which is the positive change of rate of speed. We have initial force generation, which is all about rate of force development. Center of mass management, which serves to us as the glue day, which is placing your base support in a mechanically advantageous position in order to change direction faster and better. We also have max velocity here, which is what we call the CNS governor. If we raise your max velocity, we increase the amount of force that your actual CNS can output from a total absolute ceiling level. And all of these function and work together in order to build out each and every attribute necessary for any court or sport or field or team. Any team athlete is going to use all of these, right? And you're going to use some of these to in individual sports like track, but this is mainly for the court and field sports. We're going to start here with acceleration, which we define acceleration as the positive change of rate of speed. This is our bread and butter here at KPM. We want to teach you to go from 0 to 100 as quickly as possible. It is the most used attribute in all of sports. There's nothing used more. You don't use max velocity more. You don't use center of mass more. You don't use initial force generation more. You use acceleration the most. It's the most applicable and the most important. Now, the problem is with this is that we've seen it time in and time out. This is the most used attribute, so logically it should be trained the most. However, that is very, very rarely the case in athletes that come to us or athletes that we come across that talk to us and need consulting and want to improve how well they play their sport. Right? A typical football offseason, we'll use as an example. A typical football offseason is I'm going to get done playing my sport and then I'm going to hit weights until right about the summertime, and then it starts to get nice out and I'm going to run fast again. Right? So you spend 6 months knowing that the only thing that matters outside of your game film when you go to a college football camp or showcase is how fast you run the 40-yard dash. And yet you do not focus on acceleration. You do not focus on the positive change of rate of speed. And instead you focus on all these different modalities that are not going to give you the same adaptation feedback as acceleration training it directly would. So when you look at this, you need to think in your head, I know I need to accelerate better. I need to run a better 40-yard dash. I need to spend most of my time training acceleration, not only for that showcase ability, but also for your actual film in sport, your game, your highlights, your ability to play your sport at a high level. When you go train for an NFL combine or a pro day, you spend the majority of your time when working on the 40-yard dash in the first 10 and 20 yards, that acceleration portion of it. I mean, the 40-yard dash is an acceleration race anyway, right? It's not really top-end max velocity. It's driving and accelerating the whole entire time. And when you're playing sports, the same thing is going to happen. You play football, you start every single football player from a standstill position. So you go from 0 to max speed in about a 10-yard distance over and over and over again. But most teams and most athletes do not train that over and over again. They do not get good at that, right? An easy way to think about this is if you are in the NBA, would you ever stop practicing shooting? Would you just one day go, I'm good enough at shooting? Heck no. So the same thing's for acceleration. If I want to be a good sports player, I want to be a good athlete, acceleration should be the thing I do all year round as often as possible, trying to max out that attribute. That's all I would do. Positive change of rate of speed 3 times a week. I should be accelerating at least 3 times a week. Specifically, that's 0 to 10 yards. Now, good news here is, and we tell all of our athletes this, is just like shooting a basketball, acceleration can be improved at a fast rate. You can continue to improve your acceleration regardless of where you're at in your career. Professionals still get better at shooting a basketball. Professionals still get better at running faster and accelerating if they train it correctly. Now, going through this, you then got your initial force day, your rate of force generation, right? Which we use the vertical leap as our gold standard of testing for that, because if we can increase your vertical leap, you're outputting more force in a shorter period of time relative to your body weight. And how much time do you have on a field to create force? The amount of time that your foot's on the ground. So you better be able to create it fast. If you have the most absolute strength in the world, 1,000-pound squat, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant if you can't produce that force fast. That is why we focus on the vertical leap as our gold standard of testing initial force generation. If you can jump higher, you have a high ability to run faster. You go to center of mass management, we call this the glue day. This brings together acceleration and initial force generation into usable attributes. It glues them together. All right, and we talk about this in person. We look at Michael Jordan right here. His foot is far outside of frame right with a low shin angle pointing back left. So now he's in a mechanically advantageous position with the base of support in the ground far outside of his frame to change direction very fast. Now this doesn't happen through stretching or splits, right? Michael Jordan got very good at accelerating and initial force generation, what builds up the capacity for an athlete to be able to take on and push out more force in a faster period of time. So when you change direction, it's not about hoops and hurdles. Center of mass management isn't about predetermined routes on a field with cones lined up and then you run around them and you stop in front of them and you move left, right. No, it's your physical attributes that make you a better center of mass manager. Can you output more force into the ground? Can you take on more forces from the ground when you're stopping and changing direction? That's how you improve your center of mass management. Now we look at max velocity right here. This is probably the one that gets the most glory, is like how fast you are. People think you're max velocity. Well, it's very true that max velocity can improve almost everything else that you do. It's the CNS governor. It's your ceiling. You run faster, you have a bigger chance, or you have a better chance of jumping higher and accelerating better. Very true. But the issue here is with max velocity is that it can only be trained 1 or 2 times a week depending on where you're at in your training or where you're at in your level of athleticism. If you're a young kid, you can sprint every day, but the older you get, the less you can sprint because the CNS will get burnt out from that sequencing and how much forces you take on. It's a very high stimulus, a high output stimulus. So you can only do it once or twice a week. That's why when you take a kid too who's a track athlete and you go tell them to run a 40-yard dash, it's rare, especially in high school, that they're going to run a fast 40. Like, they'll look good doing it, but they didn't train the actual part of that that's the most important, which is acceleration. So the way that we use max velocity is we use it as a tool to increase our other 3. Because I can have a kid do acceleration reps, 10-yard dashes, every single day if I wanted to. We usually do it 3 times a week. We touch on acceleration in some way, shape, or form, so we can not only master the physical aspect of things, but also the technical aspect of things. Because there is a technical portion to acceleration. It's not completely physical, although a lot of it is, especially for high school athletes. So what we're going to do when we go through a typical training cycle is start off our first day with acceleration. Because it's the most important attribute. It's what you need to be the most fresh for. Because, again, we use it the most. We need to be the best at that. Initial force generation aids acceleration because it gets the ball rolling. It gets your momentum going right away. If we increase your vertical leap, your start out of the block, your start out of the line, your start out of whatever position you're at is going to be more forceful and actually be able to take you out in a horizontal projection faster. So initial force generation, again, complements acceleration. We then have center of mass management, right, which is the complement to both of these. Acceleration and IFG. It makes sure that those things work together in one big counterbalance and one big movement that the human body does, and it makes those applicable in a sport field. And max velocity here on its own is simply an aid. Very rarely do you get up to top speed in your competition. Unless you run track. In football, very rare. Basketball, almost never. Soccer, almost never. Right? But this tool right here is used to improve a lot of different things. Improving your max velocity will make you better in your endurance on the field, because if I can increase your velocity from 20 to 22, well, now when you're tired and you can run at your fastest 22, you just drop to 20. So now you're just jogging around at 20 miles an hour. It's no effort at all. It's like me taking your bench press from 225 to 315. If you can bench press 315, 225 is going to feel pretty easy, right? It's definitely not going to feel that heavy. Whereas if I just took 225, I was like, we're going to get really conditioned at 225. We're just going to do a lot of reps at 225 all the time. Sure, you'd get better at it, but it wouldn't get you better at it than if I just increase your max weight, right? So all of these together create that performance matrix. And you think about this in the application of sports of this performance matrix. Well, we'll talk baseball here for a second. Baseball, all force stems from the ground. Your swing stems from the ground. Your velocity on how hard you throw a baseball is stemming from the ground. So if I wanted to pitch faster, 3 things that I'm going to take a look at here is how high can I vertical leap if I can output a lot of force by pushing directly into the ground. If my vertical leap is subpar, like 30 inches, and I want to throw a baseball at 90 plus miles per hour, a good place to start at is being able to jump higher. Because if you can create more force through the ground, pushing into the ground, you're going to be able to then take that force from the foot up into the trunk, rotate it out through the hand, and throw the ball harder. Same thing, if I was a pitcher and I wanted to increase my max velocity, or I wanted to increase how hard I throw a baseball, I'd go to max velocity. I would try to increase my CNS governor, because a max velocity is a much harder stimulus on the body and a much more complex stimulus than throwing a baseball is. It requires every single muscle fiber to fire in sequence on time with a lot of force. You practice that over and over again, well, then pitching becomes a whole lot easier on the central nervous system. Maybe not as a skill, but on the central nervous system. So if I increase your max V of running as a pitcher from 20 to 22 miles per hour, you're going to throw the ball harder as a result of that. You don't believe me? Go out there and try it. Right? You can't expect to throw a baseball 90 plus mile an hour if you can't vert high and you don't run fast. All right? Now, some people do just because of the size that they are, how big they are in their frame, or they're just somehow exponentially skilled a whole lot more than everybody else. But an easy place to start at, instead of throwing the baseball more and having more overuse injuries and continuing to wear your arm, your legs, your hips, everything out, go to a different modality, increase your vertical leap, increase how fast you run, and your actual speed out on the arm and throwing as a pitcher will improve along with it. So that's our performance matrix. We're going to get into each and every one of these, starting with acceleration first because it's the most important and it's the most used. If you got any comments, let me know down below. Follow us on Instagram at Climbing Performance Method. I'm trying to output content here every single day. And like the video if you like the video, honestly. I think it was a pretty good video.